50% of dentists claim that they're seeing patients that are coming in high to their appointment smoking weed, which can cause some complications, right? Especially for sedation and different things like that. Like in my brain goes, okay, so half of dentists, so the other half aren't. Is that somebody they one time seen that? Or is this something that's happening on a regular basis over and over and over again? Is this to deal with anxiety of the dental thing? Or is this a segmented population problem? Like, nope, people from these areas and this income demographic come to their dental appointment high all the time, and these ones don't. Welcome to another episode of Dental Riffs. My name is Gary Bird. I am the CEO of SMC National. We help dental offices just like yours have predictable new patient flow.
My name is Tanner Applegate. I am the CEO and founder of Unify Dental. We are a SaaS platform dedicated to helping offices centralize all of their different tools in one place.
All right, so I have a really cool topic to talk about as like a famous person, and I think I'm going to start there with that famous person, but I also have some data that came out through the ADA that blew my mind, and I think it might have a big impact on dental offices. So I think I'll kick us off first with the famous person. So there's this guy online named Liver King. Have you seen him before, Tanner?
I haven't, no.
You've never seen the Liver King?
I haven't.
Okay, you got to Google search the Liver King. So this guy, the Liver King, he's totally jacked out of his brain. He doesn't wear He doesn't wear shoes. He doesn't wear a shirt. He refuses to wear a shirt. He rolls around in his barefoot. He doesn't comb his hair, and he doesn't brush his teeth. Tanner doesn't brush his teeth. Now, what his whole stick is he has these supplements, and so you can buy like beef liver, and you can buy bull and testicles, and just like all these crazy supplements that he swears that are like amazing and really help you be more connected to the earth and like really be the man that you're supposed to be. That's kind of his stick, right? But here's the thing. He's very, very successful. Like he's been able to turn this into a very successful, lucrative business for himself. Looks like he's on steroids, but people debate that all the time, right? But here's the thing. His wife's a dentist. And before he got into this business, his wife was running a bunch of dental practices, and he helped from an operational point run that. And he says regularly, I hear him all the time, I don't brush my teeth. You don't need to brush your teeth. And his wife's a dentist. So are we being scammed with this whole brush teething? Like I've seen other people post about this before, and I've always just thought, whatever, bro, you just wanted someone to click on your post, right? Is this a scam that like is he scamming and he's just like trying to get people to buy his supplements, or is brushing your teeth something that, you know, like this guy, I don't even know how to ask the question. It's so crazy.
Right. Yeah, no, I mean, that is wild. I'm obviously like, I'm on the side that like, I'd rather err on the side of caution than on the other, right? I'd much rather be brushing my teeth just in case it is a scam than to not do it and find out that it wasn't a scam. But I mean, I don't know. I've heard that too, especially like there's a lot of things about like flossing, right? Like I've heard a lot of arguments about like, hey, you don't need to floss. Like if you start flossing, then you'll need to do it forever. But if you never start, then your teeth gap shouldn't be big enough where it's a problem. But I don't know. Every clinician I've ever talked to is obviously pro floss and pro brush. So I don't know. That's interesting though. I wonder what his wife would say about it.
Yeah, here's a video that he talks about it. Let me pull it up. Let me see if I can pull it up here. This will be good.
So his business model though is he just sells a bunch of his products.
Liver King here with a few words on oral health, because we're getting a lot of questions about how Liver King and family take care of their teeth. A couple of things. Our early ancestors didn't brush, didn't floss, and did not get cavities. Why do we get cavities? I'll tell you why. In the modern world, we don't nourish our teeth from the inside out, which came naturally for our early ancestors, chiefly liver, bone marrow, egg yolks, sunshine. The fat-soluble system is what nourishes our teeth from the inside out. Cutting out processed food is going to allow our parotid gland to continue to remineralize our teeth so that we can resist decay and so that we can rebuild the enamel. Another huge thing is mechanical loading. Today we like things that fall off the bone, or you don't have to do any work to taste it or to swallow it. The next time you're out walking, pick up a stick and start chewing on it from the molars, premolars, canines, laterals, centrals, Spend time. When's the last time you used your centrals? If you don't provide that mechanical loading, that kind of stimulus, then you're not going to have any sort of biological adaptation to maintain robust, strong bones and teeth. So, in summary, our early ancestors did not brush, did not floss, and did not get cavities. In the modern world, we do. And so what's missing? Liver, bone marrow, egg yolks, sun, and mechanical loading.
Do you watch the
Chew
whole
on a
thing?
stick, preferably one that's sitting in the wildness of nature, so that you can also infuse your oral biome with the natural pathogens that exist in nature. That's it. Liver King out.
Interesting. Okay, so I finished it.
Okay. What are your thoughts? Like, again, this isn't just some random dude. His wife's a dentist, and he helped her run those dental offices.
Whether it's true or not, the reality is, though, I mean, it goes back to like the 5 finger craze. You remember that like 10 years ago or whatever? The whole thing of like, you need to run barefoot because our ancestors ran barefoot. And so it's like, yeah, modern shoes are going to weaken your feet. But the reality is we live in a world where our feet are weakened because of whatever reason. That like, I'm going to continue to wear shoes because my feet are weakened. It's just kind of where we're at in our society. I'm not going to take the time and energy to like forego that extra advancement. So it's the same with like brushing our teeth. Sure, if I went and took the time and energy to not do it, maybe he's right. I can't even guarantee that that's even right? But maybe he is right. But to me, is it worth the time and effort and energy to get that additional benefit? Like, I don't even know if there is a benefit. So to me, it's not worth the extra effort to figure out if it's true or not.
It's just interesting that he would do that because I don't see how that necessarily helps his business. Like, it doesn't sell, but it gets eyeballs, right? It gets eyeballs.
Right. It's controversial. It's different. And I think that's always what people are interested in is like, how are other people thinking differently than me? And I mean, yeah, I think that's the whole premise of like TikTok. The more outlandish you can get things, the more people are actually going to click on it, right?
Yeah. So she ran a group of general practitioners and specialists with a proven track record that has established her as a top comprehensive cosmetic and implant dental center. The name of her practice.
Find out that she was a dentist?
I heard. Yeah, I heard it one time. Yeah, and then he talked about running the practices, and he was talking about like centralizing services for dental offices. And I was just like, oh, that's a DSO. Like you were starting to build a DSO, and instead you built a supplement company. Very interesting. And so I started doing some research, and then I heard some of his claims on not brushing, because I've heard him say before, you don't have to brush your teeth. But I was just like, whatever, that's just, but then I'm like, your wife's a dentist and you're saying that. So the name of her practice is Dentique Dentistry in Houston. And they had multiple practices. And so anyways, I don't think she does that anymore, but the website's still up.
Oh, she's out of it too.
I think so. Yeah. So it's Dentique, DENTIQ.dental, and it's out of Houston. And yeah, that was their practices there.
You don't know her name?
Liver Queen. No, I'm just playing.
Oh,
her name's Barbara.
Simplify.
Yeah, Barbara. Barbara is her name. Dr. Barbara.
I don't see
so anyways, fascinating.
That's funny. That's fascinating. Yeah, for sure. Anybody that uses that or agrees with his sentiments, let us know. We'd love to continue that conversation farther.
Absolutely. They have a lot of good Google reviews too at their that practice that she used to own. Okay, so what was the topic that you wanted to cover?
Yeah, one of them that I was interested in is I've had a lot of conversations. So for people that don't know that are listening, like we've got I'm passionate about technology and dental, right? I've worked on it when I was running the DSOs. Never had a community really to turn to that was kind of tech specific. And so I created one about a month or so back. And we've got about 30 or so different people involved in this community now. So 30 different DSOs. And one of the topics that came up recently was learning management systems, or just kind of learning and development in general. And what was surprising to me was the number of people that had like invested time and energy to build this out, but that it wasn't really adopted the way that they thought. I'm curious from your perspective, Gary, kind of like, is this something that you see a lot too? I mean, have you seen a lot of issues of people like learning and development issues of how do you scale out training your team?
Inside of dental
or in general?
Yeah,
I mean, do you guys have an LMS internally?
Do we have one? Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Does it work?
Yeah. Let me walk through our journey. So I'll walk through our journey, and then I'll kind of share with you what I've seen at dental offices. So Our journey was this: we had no systems, so we built some systems. Those systems were siloed and broken, all that kind of stuff. Normal business stuff early on, right? You're just kind of slapping stuff together, right? So then, and a lot of it's carried by the stars of the company. So whoever the CEO is, or the dentist, or whoever, right? They're kind of the backbone of that. And then you hire one good person, and they become the backbone of the next thing. And you don't really build a system for them necessarily. So then, what we ended up doing is, well, here's a huge mistake that I learned from, and I've created a lot of content around this, and it actually does really well online. I learned that you can't. So I would try to bring people in, and I'd say, "Oh, you're really good at sales, or you're really good, Tanner. You're really good at tech. So you come in and build all of our systems for tech, and I want you to do the job that you're supposed to do as well at the same time." And I see people make this mistake all the time. If you have somebody doing a job, building systems is a separate job. They can't do both. And so people, business owners and dentists, get really frustrated. They get really upset, and they go, "Man, I asked so-and-so to build this system to document it, and they never did it." And it's like, well, yeah, because they're busy doing it, and it's really a lot of work to document it. So then what we did, I kind of picked up on that. I noticed that was broken. So we started hiring project managers. And project managers came in and from the top of the business, and they would follow us through the process. And then we would document the process. And then we would take that process and we'd roll it out across the company. And we'd create SOPs, and we created hundreds of processes and SOPs. So it was like, we got all these processes and all these SOPs, and we put them up in a learning center, right? And it's awesome. But now we have so many of them, they're hard to search and they're hard to find. So now we're going back through, and we're compartmentalizing them and breaking them down in such a way that it's more of like a conveyor belt. That okay, what process are you trying to learn? It's going to take you through all of that, just that training. And a lot of people think like, well, duh, shouldn't that be the way that training should work? Yes, but when you initially start and you have your first SOP and your first system, it doesn't work that way, right? You're just kind of slapping it in there, and then you slap the next one in there, next one in there. Next thing you know, you have 50, and they're kind of all over the place. So I think there's phases to this. Where I've seen dental offices struggle the most with this is they have people who work in the business initially, but no one working on the business. So no one has time to develop these SOPs, these systems, and these training. And then what they'll do, and I've seen this over and over and over again, is like in their yearly meeting at the end of the year or whatever, they'll say, "Okay, guys, let's build these systems. Who's going to own this? All right, Tanner, you're going to own it, and that's your main thing that you're going to finish this year." They don't take anything off your plate though, and it doesn't end up happening, and it belly flops. And it's because you were also probably a dental hygienist or an office manager at the same time, and you just didn't have the bandwidth to do both. It's a heavy lift.
I agree with those. I agree with those stages that you identified. I think that what was unique or interesting to me was that a lot of the groups had gotten past that point where you're talking about right now, which is like who's going to own the creation of it, right? Like they were very similar to you where they've created a lot of stuff, but the execution of actually utilizing it was where they were falling flat as well. So for you, it seems like you're going through and you're fine tuning kind of what you use and how you use it. And I think that for them, what it was is like, it's hard to measure the lift that comes out of that versus like the alternative, which is like left, right training, right? Like you're sitting next to somebody and teaching them. And so a lot of it, I think falls like the online centralized version falls by the wayside for these like in-person trainings of people that already know how to do the job. And so when we were at Underbite, I think we put a lot of time and energy into our LMS. And I definitely see that like with a centralized team that was doing the same processes over and over again, the trainings were highly effective. Like our centralized revenue cycle management team, we could take somebody non-dental and within like a few weeks, get them to be fully functional within these different revenue cycle management processes. Mm-hmm. But in these like less kind of direct or repeating positions, like the front desk, where it's kind of like, okay, based off of what's happening right in front of me, like our trainings were a lot less effective. It was kind of like you had to just take it as it went. And that's where the left, right training went. So training or learning has always been fascinating to me. I recently made friends with a learning and development expert. And I always love conversations with her because she's got a lot of opinions on it. Maybe
what's some of the biggest takeaways that you're getting from her? And I'd love to bring her on.
it just the fact that like how you mentally approach it from the top down, right? Like it's yes, you can create a bunch of stuff, but if you create it without the understanding of like who your target customer is and where you want them to be, like a lot of people want them to start this at understanding one and end at understanding four, but in reality is like trainings only take you like one step at a time, and so you have to do it a lot slower than what I even anticipated when we built our trainings. We wanted to go straight from 1 to 4 within one training, but it's like, okay, no, you got to take them to 1 to 2 first, and then
Mm,
you take them 2 to 3. And so it's like, you got to slow things down a lot more than my anxious, always active brain would like. Right.
exactly. Exactly. Yeah, that's really good. Anything else on this? I got another topic that I wanted to talk about.
Nope. Let's hear it.
Okay, so I read an article yesterday from the ADA. 50% of dentists claim that they're seeing patients that are coming in high to their appointment smoking weed, which can cause some complications, right? Especially for sedation and different things like that. Like in my brain goes, okay, so half of dentists, so the other half aren't. Is that somebody they one time seen that? Or is this something that's happening on a regular basis over and over and over again?
That's a great question.
And
And
then
obviously,
my next question is
yeah.
this to deal with anxiety of the dental thing, or is this a segmented population problem? Like, nope, people from these areas and this income demographic come to their dental appointment high all the time, and these ones don't.
I think that there is actually a segment of healthcare that is moving towards getting high during the treatment process, where it's kind of like almost like pre-prescribed depending on like the state laws and such. And it's still very early stages, right? Like there's still legislation
For
and stuff that have
anxiety,
to get approved for anxiety, and then also just for um there were other clinical reasons that I didn't understand, and right, I don't have the background to really
yeah,
understand like the benefits of it. And I think a lot of it though is like the benefits too of are still kind of being identified of those. But as far as like the frequency of it, I would not be surprised if it was high, like a higher amount than I thought, and especially with a lot of these states where it's legalized, and you can almost like it's imperceptible of like the smell. Like if you don't smoke it and you do an edible or something, right now all of a sudden it's almost kind of imperceptible on this person on like whether they are or they aren't. So I wouldn't be surprised if it was something that even the 50% that said that they don't see them still are seeing them without recognizing that they're seeing them.
yeah. I posted it. I didn't get a ton of comments on it. I think just because it's probably not the. I posted it publicly, so dentists probably aren't feeling the most comfortable to talk about that kind of
What
stuff
was what
openly.
One controversial topic, though, that's along the same lines was in states where it's legalized, can you still, as an employee, get high, even though you're not still high when you're at work? If you get high,
Yeah,
it'll stay in your system for a while, right? So
yeah, it
is
does.
it
It stays in
legal
your
then
system
for
for a
you to be
month.
taking it? Right.
Yeah, it stays in your system for a month. So it's not like drinking where drinking leaves your body the next day. So you can't really test for drinking. If you're a forklift operator, though, do you really want them to be getting high the 2 days before? And there are studies that it does impact your cognitive abilities, over time. So I know that it does impact you that way. I don't know exactly how, but I know there are impacts from that. So that one's depends which kind of job you have, I think.
Well, and that was the one in dental recently. There was I think it was in 2018 or 19, there was a big lawsuit where uh, one of the employees got, and this was like recently after like it was legalized in a certain state, an employee got drug tested and then let go because she tested positive, and she worked in a dental office, and so she sued. And then there's this big whole thing about like there's no legislation saying that like she couldn't, but then yet like where does the cognitive, like, yes, you just need to make sure that like legally like there was some law against it. And so I don't ever remember what happened with that, but it was a very interesting conversation within our group, being in Denver and having that be kind of a central
Oh yeah, because that was the
topic.
start
Yeah.
of this whole thing was Denver
Hmm.
legalized it first, right?
Yep.
So what'd you do?
It wasn't in our group. It was a group. My one of the doctors that I worked with, he was part of the CDA, Colorado Dental Association, and so he had been actively involved in working with it. And like I said, it was a hot topic that we chatted about for a while. But ultimately, our thing was the same as yours: is that like this is one of those jobs where you've got to be fully functioning, even as a dental assistant, where you
Yeah.
can't be testing positive, even if it was weeks ago and it's very small as
Even
tracing your
painkillers,
system.
right? Like pain, even if your doctor prescribes you painkillers, you can't just be taking those because it could impact you late, even the next day from performing medical procedures.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
that's
it's a very
interesting.
interesting topic.
So, what are your thoughts on changing gears on you here? So, what are your thoughts on? Well, let me explain it this way. I go to this restaurant here in Southern California, and what they do is they take all of their bad Yelp reviews and they put them on the back of their waiters' shirts. And so as you're sitting there dining, it has these negative reviews on there. It's like 1 star. This restaurant's trash. They wouldn't give us ketchup. They said it ruins the food, right? And like those are the reviews that they have on the back of these shirts. And I just thought that was fascinating that they embraced the negativity, right? That they embraced the negative. And I really think what it made me realize was posting the negatives about you or the downsides of the stuff that you do actually attracts a certain crowd to you. Because that actually, to me, I was like, this is the kind of restaurant I want to go to, right? And if you want to catch up with your steak, probably not the right kind of restaurant for you. And I think that's what they were getting at, right? So what I've been doing lately, and I've done this for a while, is anytime somebody has like a negative review about us, especially I don't really get like consumer reviews like on Google and stuff like that. I
Right.
get like our clients, I should say. I don't get client reviews online about Google, like that. But we do get a lot of employee reviews, and we have a really good star rating. Like we have an amazing Glassdoor ranking. We have an amazing ENPS score. We track all our poll score. Like we take culture really, really hyper seriously, but not everybody's always happy. Especially, we have 100 team
Totally.
members. So
And you're
I
constantly
just,
growing and changing.
yeah, exactly. And it's not for everybody, right? And I actually understand that. Like the company we were 3 years ago, there's I can understand why somebody might have liked that one over this one, or vice versa, right? So, anyways, so I post those online. They don't have anybody's name tied to them, so it's not like I'm like trying to drag anybody in the mud or anything or troll anybody. But I post those online, and I try to be relatable as possible with them. Like, hey, here's some, this part's true, and here's why, and here's what we're doing to fix it, or this part's true, and we're not trying to fix it. And it helps me, like, it helps hold me accountable to making things better and actually improving them. But it also, I think, attracts a certain kind of person and repels a certain kind of person. What are your thoughts on that approach? Should dental organizations be taking a similar approach?
Yeah, I think that obviously the example you shared first with them, like putting it on the shirt or whatever, is a extreme perspective of that idea. To me, what it does is it says, okay, ultimately, like it almost antagonizes people to even leave more negative reviews, right? Like, oh, I want to get on my comment on a shirt. And so then really what you got to think of is like, okay, like we can't continue to market through this channel like we used to. Now we've got to go through a different channel, which could be social media, like
Yeah.
viral or whatever, right? And so from your guys' perspective of like, hey, I posted this as my team and how people think about my team, I think that there's a little bit of just publicly showing that, hey, we care about this and are paying attention to it. That makes a big difference for the end reader. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that right there speaks to a certain person that like, hey, this is something that I pay attention to. And yes, we acknowledge that we're not perfect and we're growing. And I think that's if that's the culture that you have, then that's the culture that you need to do. I mean, one of the things that I remember early on when I was a DSO learning about these larger DSOs was that there was a time where this large DSO came and chatted to a group and said, hey, these are the pillars that are important to us as a DSO. And if you agree with these, then great, we'd love to partner with you. If not, then absolutely not. And there were some pretty strict ones, or it was like there was like black and white. Like a lot of people probably fell on the black side than the white side. And so it was just interesting to see how solid they were, but it's not worth the time and effort to not be that solid in who we are. So I think that's really the value right there is who are you and identifying that and then making sure that you're speaking to that in every messaging that you do. And I think you guys do a good job of that, right? Like I read through that post and one of the things that you highlighted was that we are growth oriented and we always are changing. And so, yes, sometimes things do change and it is different. And maybe we do have to cut off a whole department of our company, but it's just kind of what happens with growth. And so now all of a sudden the reader's like, oh, I love growth. Like I love things
Yeah,
changing. I love
exactly.
to be able
Yeah.
to contribute. And all of a sudden now I want to go and work with Gary Bird. I'm not that 1-star guy.
Yeah.
So I think it's smart.
Got it. So dental offices don't embrace stuff like this, like a DSOs, let's say, more specifically for like recruiting and things like this.
I think
Have you
that
seen any?
my previous one with Underbite was very much that way, right? Dave was very big on making sure that we posted that, hey, we have a fun time as an organization. So we would do events and he would pay big money to get a videographer and photographer in there because it would create social proof of like, hey, this is what we value as an organization. And it attracted certain people that really enjoyed that type of culture. So, and it really did work. I mean, there were certain positions that people in the area struggled with constantly finding, but we had a plethora of um, applicants, right? And so I do think that people really should, as a DSO, embrace this a little bit more. But it's not always easy. Again, it just adds on to the list of a million things that they already have going on, right? From a brand
Yeah,
perspective.
but this is the biggest thing. Recruiting is the biggest thing right now. Would you agree with that in dental?
Yeah, I think it's definitely one of the top ones.
What would be above it?
I think that my perspective is probably skewed right now, but I
Okay.
always see there's
Tech.
a lot of conversations around technology,
Tech
right?
would be second, right? So I would say because tech is great because tech helps solve some of the labor issues. But if you don't have a dentist, like you don't have tech issues, you have
Right.
a person problem. So I think
Yeah.
if I was gonna, just for time's sake, I'll say okay, top problem talent, second problem tech's right behind that. So
Right.
so why doesn't the dental industry like move? It doesn't have to be this. It could be anything. I don't see people online getting aggressive in any fashion. It almost feels like dental's not allowed to do that for whatever reason.
Where would they do it? If they were to do it, where would you see it?
Social. So the CEO, whoever's in charge of culture, probably the CEO of a DSO, getting online and going through their glass doors and going through the offices and talking about, man, you know what? Our hygienists ranked us and they don't like working here, and here's what we're doing to change it. Stuff like that.
Yeah, I think that maybe in the example, the way that you do it, yes, you're right. I don't see people doing it, but there are people like Tim Richardson who's constantly posting about like the culture that he's building, right? And his is very much a coaching culture, like we build each other up type of culture. And so I think that
Yep.
it is happening out there. You get like these different groups of DSOs that I follow, the executives, that they do focus on it in a different way, but maybe not in the glass door perspective like you're doing. And honestly, I think that's a conversation in of itself is, are there DSOs that are constantly looking to optimize their glass door ratings, right? They could probably be doing better in that. The hard
Yeah,
thing
you
about
should
the
be.
DSO space is that, and we ran into this with Glassdoor because we tried to do a big push on it, is that some people would rate the individual office in which they worked, and then
Mhm.
other people would rate the DSO in which they worked. And so it was
Mm.
kind of like all of a sudden our review count would go down because it was spread out across all these different companies.
Yeah, that is a problem. I would just ask people to make a push and be two different things. Yeah, two totally different things. That's a good call out. Any other topics you have?
Yeah, one was I read this interesting article. I've been doing a lot of research on the consolidation of the dental industry, but also just consolidation of other industries. So there's this great article that I ran across in the Harvard Business Review. We'll post a link down below, but it was written in 2002, and it chats about how consolidation is essentially predictable, right? They say on average in different industries, it takes 25 years to go through a full consolidation phase, right? And then there are different indicators at each one of these different stage shifts that are very interesting to do. So like the first one, opening when a new industry is like deregulated, right? Dental now has kind of become a lot less regulated. And so it's almost kind of deregulated, right? And then there's this whole stage 2, which is the scaling. And I at first I thought, oh, we're closing up scaling and we're moving more towards the second one, which is called like focus. But honestly, there's a lot of indicators still that we're still sometimes in stage 1 shifting into stage 2. So an example is like the top 3 players of stage 2, when you move into stage 2, the top 3 players will own about 15% of the market. And the top 3 DSOs in dental are not even close to 15% of the market yet, cumulatively together.
Oh, really?
Right?
Okay.
Yeah. So
So
there's a
we're
lot of
ways out
indicators.
then.
We're ways out from even like really kind of stage 2. And so it's interesting. Obviously, I think it kind of depends on the type of consolidation that is happening or the type, like healthcare being a lot broken apart is very different than like cars, where they're product based. So it was, but some of the things that they've said really happened in stage 2 is like you have to have build a scalable IT platform. You really got to focus on the culture of the organization, and then you have to go worldwide to position yourself and not just in one individual nation. And that was what was interesting to me, is that's what we're starting to see a lot more of.
Yeah, you're starting to see like Aspen moving to other countries or other verticals to keep the growth rate up.
Heartland just partnered with a group out of Canada. There's been a lot of like European ones with North American.
So what's the takeaway then? What are you seeing? What are you seeing that other people aren't because of this perspective?
I think that it's closing down slowly, right? I think that there's still a lot of consolidation to be done. The fact that they're not at 13%, my math puts them more at kind of like cumulatively the top 3 are about 5%. Mm-hmm. So I think there is still a lot of consolidation. But what could be happening too is that they talk about like the top 3 to top 5, 10 players or so. And it could be that these larger companies, instead of just continuing to consolidate the way they are, they just start buying up a lot of these smaller mid-sized companies.
Yeah, that could happen
so
really quick too, right?
That way. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
instead of buying onesie, twosie, I start buying 20 and 50 and 100.
Well, I think that they're already doing that, but yeah, they're buying their other competitors that are 500, right? Maybe there's a big merge between MB2 and this other group or something like, I don't know.
I wonder what the laws are against all this kind of stuff too, right? Because there comes a certain point where they don't let you continue to consolidate. There has to be options.
Yeah, monopolies and such. And I think that a product-based business, you're running into a lot more of a risk of a monopolization. But for a service-based business like dental, I don't think that that's really a risk that you run into because of the fact that it's so decentralized.
Got it. That makes sense.
Right? Like
Interesting.
Google, it makes sense that they could be a monopoly because you can centralize it the same way in any geographic location.
It's fascinating. You know how Google avoids being the government breaking them up, even though they like dominate in search? If you look at them as a search engine company, they're a monopoly, 100%. But they don't categorize themselves as a search engine company. They're an ad platform. And in the world of advertising, they're a decent size, but they're not anything close to a monopoly. So they're like, yeah, you can advertise with us or you can advertise with all these other things, right? And so when like you got Facebook and you have all these other places you can run ads, right? And so how you categorize yourself is how that's how they protect themselves.
I know, it's brilliant. I remember going through and I watched a lot of the Supreme Court cases about this, where they had each of the CEOs of the different companies testify in front of the Supreme Court, and it was just very interesting to see how each of them spun off their company and were to kind of justify why we're not a monopoly and we shouldn't be broken up, etc. It was very fascinating.
Well, this has been a good one, Tanner. Anything else you want to cover?
No, I mean, that was awesome, man. That was great.
Awesome. Well, like, review, share, do all that stuff. If you listen to the end, then you are definitely a dental nerd. Drop us a message. We'll shout you out on the podcast. Have a good one.
All right. See ya.